I'm not exactly familiar with the process of printing my images. I've printed my images quite a few times in the past, don't get me wrong, but I've always had a hand. I found things just too technical and also just way too expensive for me to even bother to actually try and learn how to, get everything mastered with printing. Instead, I would prefer to go into the darkroom and make my prints by hand, as I had the supplies supplied to me by my college and university, and I just much preferred the process of actually seeing this print be made before my eyes, like you can see it appear. I just thought it was so cool, and I would love to do this if I still had access to a darkroom, but unfortunately I don't anymore. However, all hope is not lost, as I've recently purchased myself a printer that is incredibly simple, compact and surprisingly high quality. And as you can tell by the title, that printer is the Canon Selphy, otherwise known as the Canon CP1500. This is a printer that I heard about either in the first or second year of university, and I thought it was really cool. But as printing wasn't exactly a big part of my work, I just never bothered buying one. I'd always prefer to use that money on something else like a film camera, more film, or a lens or something like that. But I keep seeing people buy this printer and just praise it so much, so curiosity got the better of me and I decided to buy one. I've owned it for just over a month now, probably like a month and a half, and while I haven't printed loads of images, I've printed enough to share some thoughts. This isn't going to be a review or anything, and I don't even know how I would review a printer as I know practically nothing about them. So don't expect to hear anything like technical in this video or even like stuff that you might want to hear. I'm basically just going to be talking about why I like this printer and what I think it's good for. And I'll also show you a bunch of prints that I made. It's quite thick with the amount of prints that I've made actually. I've made more than I thought I did. There's probably like 30 in here. But before all that, I'll quickly just explain why I bought it. Like I mentioned before, printing wasn't exactly a big part of my workflow. It's not like I didn't want to print, I just didn't have the means to print. At college, we were only able to print on special occasions, as the printer that we had is I don't even know what the name of it, but it is the top of the line printer. I don't even know how we got one at college because the budget wasn't actually that big for the course, but we somehow had like the best printer in the world. It was like actually insane. Just getting the ink for it cost a few grand, and it was a very special occasion to use that printer, so we only done it maybe once or twice a year. And then at university, I just got a bit intimidated by trying to learn all the technical stuff with printing, because we would have to do it fully ourselves, so I was just like, don't really want to do that. During my time at college and university, I was still printing in the darkroom, and I really preferred the way of doing that, since it was less technical and just more hands-on. So printing in the darkroom satisfied that want to print, and I was really happy with the prints that I did make in the darkroom. However, since leaving university, I haven't actually had access to a darkroom or a printer, apart from my brief time when I was on my teaching course, but I decided to leave that as I just could not afford to stay on that course anymore. So since then, even if I wanted to print, I just couldn't do so. And that's exactly what's been happening for a while now. I've been wanting to print my images, but I've just had no means of doing it. And after seeing constant posts and stories on Instagram and the occasional video on YouTube, I decided to buy myself a printer, and there was no better one to go with than the Canon Selphy. There's a few things that I really like about the Canon Selphy, and there's only one thing that I'm actually not too keen on. And the first thing I like is how simple this printer is to use. When I first got it out the box, I was pretty nervous about setting it up, since it's not something that I've done before. I had issues in the past with printers connecting to PCs when I was at college or university, and these were just the ones that you print off like a letter on or something like that. And I was never the one to sort them, so like setting up my own printer, I was just incredibly nervous. And I was just clueless on what to do if something went wrong. So I got up a video on how to use the Canon Selphy with a printer, and I followed it. But something that was mentioned in the video is that the Canon Selphy is a lot easier to use if you just connect it to your phone. And I was a bit skeptical about this, as I've used Canon apps in the past with like printers and other things, and they haven't been very good. They've not been like bad by any means, but it's not been, reliable. But when I set the printer up and downloaded the app, I was surprised how easy it actually was to use. All you have to do is turn the printer on. You then go into the app on your phone, and in there's a bunch of different options, but you want to select the one that's just called like photos or something along those lines. Once you're in that section, you can select all the images that you want to print, and then once you've printed them, you'll then go to another page where you can sort out some things like your borders, your finish on the images, like if you want matte, semi-gloss or glossy, and some other stuff. And then once you're done with that, you will then see a preview of what your prints will look like, and then you can decide from there if you want to keep some or get rid of some. And once you're done with that, just press print. It will send the images over to the printer. It will take a decent while if you've got quite a few images. If you've got one, it may take like 5 seconds, but if you've got, like 5 to 10, it can take a bit longer, especially if your files are large. But once they're on the printer, you can, walk away and do whatever you want, and they will just print them by themselves, and it will just come out, and they won't cross over each other and scratch each other up or anything like that. You can just leave them there, it will print them, and you'll be fine. But the second thing I like about this printer is how good the prints actually are. While they aren't award-winning or blowing any minds, they are pretty good for what is essentially the price you're paying for each print. The resolution is high enough, the sharpness is surprisingly good, and the colours are mostly accurate to what you would, see on a computer. Occasionally there will be a bit of a colour shift, but it's not like it will be noticeable to anyone but yourself. It will just look a little bit off to your eyes as the photographer and the one that, made those images. Like I said before, the prints aren't going to be award-winning or blowing anyone's minds, but they are better than what you would expect a printer that, of this size and this price to create. They are high enough quality to give to your friends and family as a gift, to frame on the wall or whatever, or even sell them if you would like to do that. Personally, I want to use this printer so I can have a collection of images that are basically archived and, cemented as real things rather than just files on a computer. I also want to have a bunch of images that I can just put on my bookshelf or on my wall and just have them there as a nice collage of just some images that, make me feel warm. And I doubt I'll actually have the audience to sell prints, but if any of you want to buy some prints from me, just let me know. You can pick the image, I'll print it off, and I'll only charge you for the paper, ink, and postage, which will probably be a £5 in total. So yeah, if you want to buy some prints, let me know. I'll happily send you some. But another thing I like about this printer is just how small and compact it is. I don't have a lot of space on my setup, so I was worried about getting a printer. And although that I knew the Canon Selphy was a small printer, I was still very worried. However, even with the limited space I have on my desk, it's just not an issue. It's so much smaller than I thought it was going to be, and it just basically has its own place whenever I'm printing, and when I'm not printing, it just goes into the corner and stays there and doesn't take up any room. And I just can't emphasize how small this printer actually is. It's 182 by 133mm, which sounds small, but it's a bit difficult to grasp how small that actually is, so I'll show you how small this is compared to a few different things. See how small it is when compared to a PS5 controller. That is really small. PS5 controllers are small controllers, and this printer is only the tiniest bit bigger than it. Or even the Nikon ZF, for a camera to be practically the same size as a printer, that's just insane. Or just a DVD case or, PlayStation case or whatever. See how small it is? It's basically the same size. Anyway, you get the idea. This printer is small. It's that small that you could even just put it in a very small bag and take it out with you to print on the go. In fact, this is actually how it's advertised. It's advertised as an on-the-go printer, and you can buy a battery pack that Canon make that attaches to it, and you can just take it out with you and print as you, walk around, or, if you're going to the park and you want to print some images for some friends or whatever. That's how small it is, and that's how light it is, and that's how convenient that it is. However, the battery pack that can sell is twice as expensive as the printer itself, so I just wouldn't recommend doing that. Just have it as an at-home, easy printer. But while we're on the topic, something else that I love about this printer is the price. Without any deals or anything like that, or any savings, I got the Canon Selphy with 108 sheets of paper and 2 ink cartridges that can hold, enough ink for the paper for less than £120. And that is just insane. Getting a printer, 108 sheets of paper, and all the ink that you need for those sheets of paper that, you know, produces images as good as this for £120 is just ridiculous. If my math is correct, that's around like 20 to 30p per print, which is really good for how high quality these prints are. And like I mentioned, they're not going to blow anyone's mind or anything like that, and they're not going to win awards, but they are very good for the price. Also, my math could be completely wrong there, so please let me know. But anyway, I'll move on to the one thing that I'm not too keen on about this printer. It's not even something that bad, and it's completely avoidable if you just take precautions. But when you are printing images, because the printer is so small, the paper has to come out of the printer fully, pretty much, to then do the different layers of ink. And if you have any dust in the room, this dust will get on your prints and make some kind of annoying marks. When I was printing my first few images, I didn't know about this. I didn't think it was going to be an issue because I didn't realise that the print had to fully come out. For some reason, I don't know why I didn't think that, because I've seen it happen on printers before, but I didn't think that it was going to do it on this one. And I thought if it did come out, it would be hidden by the little white tray that there is. But this is basically just what holds the paper, and then when it prints, it doesn't actually, you know, stay covered or anything, and it also comes out the back of the printer as well. So there's a lot of places where your paper can be exposed to dust, and I didn't know this. I had my fan on in my room, not even blowing towards me, just trying to circulate a bit of air because it was so warm in here. And because of that, there was more dust in the air than usual, and that dust went on my prints, and one of them was completely ruined, and I genuinely don't know where it is. I think I might have thrown it away when it happened, but I feel like I also kept it for this video so I can show you, but I can't find it. But then there's a couple other prints, they had some marks on them, but it wasn't, you know, that bad to throw them away. So yeah, if you're printing, just make sure that there's not loads of airflow. Like, it wasn't even like there was loads of airflow when I was doing it the first time, but make sure you don't have a fan on in a different part of your room that's facing a different direction. You know, you just want to make sure that there's as little dust in the air as possible, and it might even be worth creating something that covers the printer when you are printing, so then no dust gets on it. But other than that, this printer has been really good, and it's been really fun printing images, whether that's images that I've taken on like my X-T4, my GFX, my Nikon ZF, or even just silly ones on my phone. Like, I got one of my cat Skylar, which I just absolutely love. She's just so adorable, and I knew I needed to print it out, and I done so. And it's just so easy printing these images, whether they are silly ones like the one of my cat Skylar, or serious ones that I've taken on my computer, that I've taken on my camera, edited on my computer, and then, you know, are in storage. I can just, you know, download them from the internet, have them on my phone, and then print it, and it'll just come out of the printer. It's just so easy. And if you're wanting a printer that is high quality, easy to use, and won't break the bank, then the Canon Selphy is a very serious candidate for that selection. And if you want to see more about this printer, let me know in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.